This is the topic for tonight. I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. Obviously, this T-shirt my wife just got me. As I've described before, I'm a massive movie fan. I own so many Blu-rays and so many digital copies of movies. I literally know how large my library is. Like 1,200 movies now. It's huge. But yeah, I have the Blu-ray version of the classic Sidney Lumet film Network, starring Faye Dunaway, William Holden, Peter Finch, and Robert Duvall. All four, by the way, career highs or near highs in performance for each one of these in this movie. This is one of the best satirical dramas you'll ever watch. This is true critique cinema. Okay. And the story surrounds a legit newscaster who's going through a rough time in his life. And his name is Howard Beale. He's played by Peter Finch. And the journey of the character, the story arc of the main character, Howard Beale, is one of being a mainstream, legit voice in society, then going through hard times, then kind of turning into, through desperation, through depression, through sadness, through frustration and anger, he turns into this bombastic, almost pugilistic media frenzy. And I think a lot of people in the real world kind of copied the Howard Beale character. I'm actually looking something up right now. You know, daytime talk show hosts. Remember Morty's talk show? What was that, late 80s, early 90s? Anytime that you're a legitimate messenger and you suddenly fall into the trap of Howard Beale, where the information is no longer the point to your communication. The point to your communication is the bombasticness of the reaction to the communication. So what you end up getting into is a trap where it is the presentation, the theater, the bombasticness, the level of pugilism, that becomes what the audience pays attention to. It's not the substantive factors below why you're mad in the first place. Sidney Lumet, and I've said this. I've said this for ages. I think art is so predictive to life. It can be both predictive and it can both be representative. I think something like Blue Thunder with Roy Scheider is a predictive piece of art. It predicts the militarization, the insane militarization of law enforcement in America, even as crime goes lower and lower. Especially violent felonies go lower and lower. You know, the writer of the movie and the director, Sidney Lumet, never intended Beale to be a person representing a real person in life. It was an amalgam. It was an amalgam of for the use of storytelling of how do you turn an information ecosystem into a system of public anger that simply chases ratings. Now, there's a lot of Beale-like figures in real life. Probably the most deliberate Beale clone out there is Glenn Beck. I think he watched this movie and got all the wrong ideas. It's like watching Inglourious Bastards and cheering for Christoph Waltz's character. Cheering for the wrong side here. Probably the most unhinged, mutant-minded version of Howard Beale in real life is Alex Jones. But you have other comparisons like the pugilistic side of Howard Beale. That's basically Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks. And he's one of many that I just felt like, as the internet became this internet and independent talk, independent narrative, independent journalism, I spent a lot of time watching the Young Turks. And I still like JR and I still like John. I see their short clips every once in a while, and I was like, oh, these guys still have their heads screwed on straight. I don't see that in Cenk or Anna. I think they've jumped the shark in the Bealian sense. There's a big problem, and it's the reason I kind of the last time I watched this was a couple of weeks ago, but it's been in my mind the whole since. And I've seen two absolute great movies since. Sam Rockwell's new flick, "Stay Calm, Don't Die." Don't say have fun, don't die, something like that. AI dystopia, absolutely fabulous movie with a good, solid, straight down the middle message in it. And I saw I bought it on Fandango, One Battle After Another. Fantastic film. Could see why it won awards. But this like whole cinema representation of how this mid 1970s movie spawned not the Howard Stern social transgression media. Like, Howard Stern made his money and made his fame on just being like dark comedy, roast comedy, nothing's off limits. Sort of wound up, almost crazed comedy. Like how Shock Jock was which he invented practically, or at least he perfected it. Like when the Air Florida plane made it from the national airport to the Potomac River and then crashed, and a whole bunch of civilians had to pull the survivors out of the water, out of the river. Howard Stern the next day calls the reservation desk for Air Florida and asks how much is a one-way ticket between National Airport and the Potomac River. Hard joke, yeah, but it was in a time where airline safety was in question. So was it a dark, in-your-face joke? Yeah. Was it appropriate for the moment? Socially, probably not. Satirically and critically, yeah. But I'm not talking about like the Howard Sternisms. I'm talking about the feral mutations of Howard Beale. Okay. Like Alex Jones, Glenn Beck, Sean Hannity, and they're all right-wing figures. I really thought about this, and I really can't put my finger on a leftist that pulls so much of Howard Beale into real life, with the only exception of Cenk's pugilism. So what's funny is we have to ask ourselves, especially if you're going to be an independent voice, like I'm trying to be, and that's all I'm trying to be. I'm just trying to be, hey, I have a thought, I have an idea, I have a suggestion. Could you please take it into consideration and put it into your bailiwick? I'm not trying to start a cult. Okay. It's like that magician we saw in the city in the comedy act. She's so funny, Lucy. The audience is so into her, they know her line, so sometimes they say it before she does on stage. And she goes, "Would you guys stop that? This is exactly why they think we're a cult." There's an attraction to the Beale character in Network. Now, the attraction could be a healthy critical attraction, or it can be a manipulation taken to disinformation, to performative lecturing, let's call it. Because there's one thing to be the angry man on TV or the angry man on the internet. And yeah, I know I like dropping F-bombs all the time. I swear like a sailor or a soldier. But what we have to be mindful of is when we talk, it's okay to be mad. I'm okay with my emotions. I get mad, I get sad. A grown man, not afraid of crying. Okay? It's okay to have your emotions. That's completely normal. Okay? Anybody who lives up in a bottled, corked bottle emotional state, that's not healthy. I'm not saying you should break down at, every moment of the day, every time you see a puppy, but, you should be okay if you have an emotional reaction to an event. But where the taking the cinema character of Howard Beale and putting it into a real political communication landscape, that's where it gets weird. Should any of us, considering so many people who like Jerry Springer, the daytime talk show guy, Morty is the other guy I'm thinking of. They're really close to the character Beale, the Springers, and the other daytime radical, any daytime. Think of any daytime talk show that they started throwing chairs at each other. That's an offshoot of the personification of this sense of Howard Beale. Jag says a week to near total media silence. The numbers is 6.6 trillion in assets against 47.8 trillion in total liabilities. I'm not sure what that's referencing to. I think he's talking about market cap of media. Media is huge. It's got a huge presence. It's got a huge voice for sure. But should we be listening to any persona that the rage itself, the spectacle of the rage, is the content itself? I don't think we should be going there. I hope, and in nobody's mind, even if you don't like what I have to say, I hope in no one's mind they accuse me of going to a place where I was just raging for the presentation of external emotionality to try to trigger some sort of reward response in the spectacle. Do I say things simply because I think it will generate a lot of clicks? No. In fact, one of my notes that have gone completely ballistic, it's approaching 1,000 likes right now and several hundred restacks. It was just a joke. It was just something I laughed internally about. Larry and his brother Daryl and his other brother Daryl, is probably more qualified than Mark Wayne Mullen to replace Kristi Noem. Yeah, that post shot off. Okay. Would I have ever thought it shut off and so many people would be commenting, liking it, remembering the Bob Newhart show, remembering other triplets like the Three Stooges, as counter references? No, no. If we're just going to be the angry man on the internet and we're just trying to resell despair as a product, I don't think we're serving the greater good. Several of my essays, I spent a lot of time researching those essays. I wasn't spouting off from an uninformed place. I worked on for almost a week the data models and the opinion articles about where the economy has gone since Reagan and all that. Before I wrote, the American Dream was assassinated in 1978. I didn't mean to put it out there on a whim. It wasn't a whim. It was a concerned thought based on a long process of research, writing, and rewriting, making sure that my normalization of the data made sense. The normalization to a current dollar so people could understand what the shifts were in costs. I'd rather present, and I think everybody should be paying attention, because I've been talking about this before, how we need to separate the good sources of information from the bad sources of information. And a lot of those bad sources of information are related to Trumpianism, MAGA, white nationalism, Christian nationalism, pan-nationalism. So when you have like a lot of mixed messages and a lot of that mixing isn't honest contribution or honest retort and response, what I'm worried about is we're creating a situation where sober information takes a back seat to audience manipulation. And I think there's real examples out there that are happening in real time. And it's not just with the bombastic media providers. CBS News has been effectually hijacked by the far right. When they have a far right ombudsman who hates the left, hates herself, by the way, and she's in charge of making sure the content speaks to nationalism at every turn, anything that doesn't support the nationalist narrative will get panned minutes before broadcast. We've already learned that. You got problems with the New York Times. You got problems with the Washington Post. Two newspapers I subscribed to for a very long time. Okay, I don't anymore. Why? Because I feel the mission of not just those two newspapers, but the other billionaire-owned newspaper, a Los Angeles Times, again, until a few years ago, was a very good paper. They want the entrapment of the audience on top of the manipulation of the audience. And they want that to be fed over the hard news, the sober information, the facts as we know them. And remember what the news is. The news is the first version of history. But when history occurs and we start to document it, and you will only document it with one eye closed, you've got a real bad vantage point. You have a very poor relativity to the truth. So I want to tell you all, like I said, I'm okay with my emotions, getting pissed off. It's a thing that happens when you have post-traumatic stress disorder. You lose the ability to stop the triggers that just send you from 0 to 9. Okay. In fact, I just had this conversation with both a military veteran and police veteran friend. He was in the Navy. I was in the Army. We both went to the police academy together years and years and years ago. Yeah, he's in therapy for the same reason I was a couple of years ago. Unable to switch off the anger compulsion. I'm calm. I'm at a 1 or a 2. Something little happens or 2 little things happen. I'm 279. What the fuck just happened? Now I'm in a bad mood. Or now I'm like completely angry. Post last therapy cycle, I control it. I recognize, well, I don't control it. I recognize it's happening and then find a diversion so I calm the fuck down. But I'm saying is your emotions are okay. You should be mad as hell. Okay, I just did the last video. They want to take away every consumer grade Wi-Fi router out of the market for reasons of nationalism, fake national security, jingoism, and total bullshit. And then they want to set up a rent-seeking gateway. Oh, did you buy some meme coin? Did you give me a gold trinket in the Oval Office? Your Wi-Fi router's approved for sale in America. Not that guy. He didn't buy enough of my meme coin. They're destroying markets. They destroyed the soybean market for the farmers. Destroyed. Okay. You took a market that was worth $2.5 billion a year. You throw a couple of $1 billion at them and say, all good. Wait a minute. You permanently eliminated $2.5 billion a year. And you think a payment this year is going to cover the next how many years? You're destroying markets. You should be mad how they just manipulate everything into a trans problem. Whatever it is. Ted Cruz gets a flat tire on the way home from work. Gotta be those trans folks fucking with my tires. Somebody doesn't get approval from the government to build their new compound. Oh, must be those trans folks fucking with us again. Bullshit. Bullshit. You should be mad. They just keep picking out a group and blaming most of the problems on Earth on them. When there's plenty of evidence that the real sex offenders, the real criminal weirdos in the world have a large tendency to be white, Christian, Midwestern, and religiously affiliated, if not religiously employed. Another Duger and his wife are going to go to prison for false imprisonment and rape of a minor. But you got a heartache with trans folk. Why? Why? You should be mad as hell that the Iranian war is just going to be a global inflation mess. Because he's not just knocking off oil. That's misunderstood wildly. Okay? The war he started, the war he chose, the war of choice based on grievance and animus, not national security, will affect oil, natural gas, liquefied natural gas, urea, type of fertilizer, and nitrogen fertilizers in general. Okay? I haven't noticed springs here. Okay? What happens in the spring? Tractors need to roll. The fertilizer bins need to be filled up. The seed punchers need to be filled up. And we need to start driving those diesel tractors and all those other equipment across the fields to get the planting season in. That's just not America. That's anywhere in the northern hemisphere that's about to have spring. How are you going to do that when you're low on oil, gasoline, diesel, natural gas, liquefied natural gas, urea, and most nitrogen chemical fertilizer, synthetic chemical fertilizers? How's that going to work out, Sparky? You know, our allies in Italy, Germany, and Italy, Germany, and Britain, I'd say has a high probability chance of having energy shortages and rolling blackouts this winter because of the energy fiasco caused by the Iranian war. You should be mad as hell that TSA agents aren't showing up to work because Republicans refuse to pay them. According to Republican Senate leader Thune, he put his own bill down this weekend to pay TSA and get the damn airport set up. Trump said no. He's going to send in a bunch of ICE agents to beat up on a tourist in San Francisco which ICE didn't need to be in San Francisco. They have private security, not TSA, but ICE showed up anyways. Getting the con yet? Okay. They want to send ICE in the airport to stand around with their fists up their own ass, looking at their cell phone, doing Twitter and Ramble and Grindr. Not doing anything for physical security, because leaning on a rail and playing on your phone isn't physical security. I did physical security when I was in the MPs. That's not it. Now that TSA is calling in sick more people are quitting, and still the lines are getting longer. I understand from Atlanta, they shut off the waiting time after it went over 6 hours today. 6 hours to get through security. How does the elderly or disabled get through a 6-hour line? So his answer to the TSA falling apart because Trump submarine Thunes deal, Trump submarine Republican senator and leader of the Senate Thunes bill on Sunday. He's the one that submarined it, according to Senator Kennedy, Republican, Louisiana. So she'd be mad as hell the airport travel is getting fucked up, and they sent ICE in to do nothing at millions of dollars a cost per day. And now he's threatening to send in the National Guard to do nothing. You should be mad as hell. You should be mad as hell they're willing to spend $2 billion a day, somewhere between $1 and $2 billion a day, fighting a war for Israel in Saudi Arabia. By the way, we spent hundreds of billions of dollars funding those two states since the 90s. They can't even fight their own war for 5 minutes. What the fuck are we doing in the Middle East? Yes, you should be mad as hell. Okay, but how do we communicate? How do we get through this? How do we message? How do we deal with the substance of the problems? There's a huge substantive problem with the Iranian war. If they said this was a threat, it should have gone through the House Intelligence Committee and the Senate Armed Services Committee. It did not. The Gang of Eight found out from Twitter and True Social that a war had been started. Grindr Mike Johnson post facto says, oh, the Gang of Eight was briefed after the bomb started, not before. How much of a coalition was built before we started bombing? None. I guess the commander-in-chief of America, Bibi Netanyahu, told his quisling, Donald J. Trump, to start a war, and Trump did. Without the approval of Congress, without debate in the House. Who declares war in our government? It's not the President of the United States. It's the House of Representatives. Especially when you tell us that you're literally 7 or 8 days into the war and you need $200 billion more, but at the rate you're going, it's only going to pay 1 or 200 days more of the war. Yes, the republic is collapsing before our eyes. That's exactly the whole point Howard Beale has in the Network movie. That's what he's railing against. You see them disassembling, deconstructing, and devolving a once great nation, a once great economic power, a once great society that could always have been made better in all those avenues and more. But instead, what are we doing? Apparently, we're fighting other people's wars. So the president's sons, Uday and Qusay Trump, can start a drone company. And we shouldn't be mad about that. We shouldn't be mad that somebody is betting on the Iran war and making hundreds of millions of dollars doing it. We shouldn't be mad that people in Congress bought stock right before the bombing started and they cashed in already. We shouldn't be mad as hell about that. Yeah, we should. But what I don't want to be is part of a media spectacle where the spectacle is the only fucking point. The point of me speaking up is I think Americans deserve better, especially our children and our grandchildren. And when I say Americans, I mean all Americans, including the people who live in America. Because a lot of people who live in America end up going through the process, get naturalized, and become U.S. citizens. I know so many people, especially from the different places I've worked in the Bay Area. So many people. They come back from lunch, they got their certificate, they got their little American flag, and they're all happy, and they're like, what'd you just do? And they go, oh, I just became a U.S. citizen. I'm like, oh, high five, great, awesome. That's who we should be making the world a better place for. That's who we should be building a better country for. Okay? But it seems right now, the only people we care about are the people who have enough money to put a $100 million bet on what time the bombs drop on Tehran. I worry about opportunity for my kids. I've mentioned this before. All my children have master's degrees. A master's in design, a master's in visual arts for media from one of the best conservatories, music schools in the world. And the other one's an environmental scientist with a degree in coastal ecology. Okay. My wife has a master's degree. Hers is in museum studies. Her minor is in art history. Yes, it's a professional thing to run a museum. Yeah. Okay. Why is education so expensive? Now, I'm not even looking back, even though I paid for 2 associates, 4 bachelors, and 4 master's degree. Meanwhile, I was dumb enough to join the Army when I was 17. I've never been to college. Okay. Why is education and healthcare and housing so expensive? Why do so many of our resources go to things that don't have anything to do with the everyday life of an average working American? Why should I not be mad at the fact you tell us that the Iran war was unescapable, yet your congressional briefing says there was no immediate threat? Kant says there was no immediate threat. Okay, but we can't have pediatric research. And with RFK and Dr. Oz in charge of the health services, we're not going to get health care at all. If you get skin cancer or a carcinoma or some kind of noma, I guess you're just going to burn some sage and rub some beef tallow on it. All good. I guess the next time Joe Rogan gets COVID, he's not going to put horse dewormer up his ass. He's going to literally let Robert Kennedy Jr. lube up his fist with tallow and stuff it up Joe Rogan's ass. There you go. No more COVID. That's your healthcare system now. And we're not supposed to be mad at that? Because you said you didn't like abortion and vaccines. Now it turns out you don't like healthcare. Why? Because healthcare costs money. No, it costs a tiny amount of money compared to things like, I don't know, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Syria. Okay, the global war on terror in 25 countries. Tiny, tiny, tiny amounts compared to that. But we never have the money to take care of people. We always have the money to bail out a crime, to start a war, or to subsidize somebody who's already a billionaire. These are all things you should be mad at. But the reason I took a couple of days was to think about, to review for myself. I don't want to come off as Howard Beale or any of the real life personas that kind of copied the movie. I want to be the person who tells you this is, from all the research we can do, this is not true. Tax cuts create growth. No evidence of that whatsoever. Daylight savings time makes corn grow. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. Abortions make women suicidal and lead to cancer and poor health when they're elderly. Not true. The death penalty is a deterrent to crime. Not true. The police tank is effective in managing crime in a community. Not true. The flock camera systems are not a nationwide surveillance system to support the worst policies we have in any state, such as tracking women after they went and see a doctor. This has actually happened with the flock camera. Flock camera system is not about what they're selling it. Their sales pitch is not true. It's the same problem with the red light cameras. You spend thousands and thousands of dollars with these out-of-town assholes. You take money away from patrol, and then you wonder why nothing happens in the end. You don't have any effect on crime. You don't have any support, any more support from the community. It's because you completely chose the wrong bullshit. I'm hoping, and I'm working on a couple of essays right now. One I keep re-editing. I'm doing the pre-release book thing on that essay and keep rewriting it. I think everybody else who gives a shit about the future in this country and our society, we need to be mad, upset, concerned, however you like to describe it for yourself. But you don't need to be the raving lunatic either. Because in the end, once you become a spectacle, nobody trusts your sanity anyways. That's why nobody actually, even in his own listeners, Alex Jones is trusted by nobody, not even his own listeners. He is just a running black comedy sketch for them. Screaming the shit they know they would lose their job and their girlfriend would leave them over saying. That's it. There's no substance to the Jones type outburst and conspiracy theory and the general bullshit. So when we talk about heading into the midterms and we talk about the good information systems versus the bad information systems, we talked about this before. When you find your older uncle or your grandfather, whoever, watching Sean Hannity, just for an example, one of many problems on media, bring up what Sean Hannity is copying. Dumbly, by the way. Because Sean Hannity is not a smart man. Okay, I keep bringing that up with my friends. I said the biggest problem with the ultra conservatives right now is none of them are really smart. A lot of them are stupid fools. I can tell you, 90% of the clowns you see now identifying themselves as a ultra conservative, they have less than 10% of the intellect as William Buckley Sr. I may have not agreed with everything that Buckley came out of Buckley's mouth, but there's one thing I can't ever say about the man: he was dumb. That the opposite is true there. That was one intelligent man. A little angry, a little off base sometimes, but intelligence wasn't his problem. So when you see the older family member, the friend, the older neighbor, I wish I'd have handled it better with my neighbor Bruce before he died, because he was really caught up on the far right shit. And he said something to me today, and I was gardening and I had a tool in my hand, and I spun my fucking head around and I looked at him square in the eye and said, if you want to do that shit, you're going to have to get past the veterans. I forget the exact topic he was talking about, but it was something like, what's going on now with ICE when they were like floating the idea. Several though the crazies were floating the idea, and it became mainstream in the Trumpian movement. I wish I wouldn't have taken that tact with him. I wish I would have calmly responded that that's not the way we do things, and explain them the way we did things back in the day and how it worked, and how there is not a crime wave caused by the people on Newsmax who's telling you something different. And why the information sources are so important today is there's a finite window to solving this. And if we do have the fortunate time in November and we can change course in this country, the worst we'll have to deal with is the remnants dying off. Because I think a lot of this authoritarianism dies off with the boomers. Not that it's in every age group, it is. Look at the young Republicans at the Florida University literally photoshopping themselves as Third Reich personalities like Goering and Goebbels. We're going to still have a latent problem underneath, for sure. But the mainstreaming of this crap could stop as early as November. It's definitely going to stop in 3, 4, 5 years from now when you start seeing the decay curve because of the mortality of the boomer generation. And what I don't think the millennials and the alphas understand is Gen X. Don't confuse a lot of times us not giving a shit publicly with us not caring personally. It's just a defense mechanism of the Gen Xers. We were told to go outside and play and not talk to our parents for 10 hours a day. We were the anti-latchkey kids. Nobody really cared about us. We did what we wanted. Shit happened. But we're not, and like most of my closest friends, they're about my same age. They're somewhere between 50 and like 66. I just turned 60. All of them are like centrists. Some of them are center left. Some of them are center right. Some are liberal Republicans in the old Lincoln Chaffee sense. But most Gen Xers are kind of super open-minded. So I think when the boomer hate goes away, I hope the younger generations realize you got a lot better chance with us. Because at least, again, because of our upbringing and our weird attitudes, we may not totally agree with you, but we also won't accept the bullshit, the pugilistic bullshit from the other side. So when you see somebody grabbing the wrong information in a modern sense, I just spilled my drink on this. In the modern sense, what they're copying, and bring it out, give them some total reality to the situation. This is what they're copying art. They're copying legitimate cinema, talking about legitimate societal macro issues. They copied it, and like you want to have a good birthday present before the midterms, buy that older relative, that older friend, that older neighbor a copy of Network. Or I looked it up. It's on. You go to Just Watch. It tells you where what movie is on whatever service. Network is currently available for $4, pretty inexpensive, on like 7 different systems. So it's definitely watchable. Have them watch this movie and have them pay attention to crazy Howard Beale. And when they're looking at Sean Hannity, they're looking at Glenn Beck, they're looking at Tucker Carlson, Cenk Uygur, even Joe Rogan, Bill Maher, and a few others. Okay? This is what you're watching. You're watching a bad adaptation for nefarious purposes based on this character. And just know what you're watching. Okay? Be an adult. Realize what you're doing. Identify what you're doing. And then use that as a place to deal with it. Okay. Because most of what they're talking about in this psycho-Trumpian, Bealian presentation on the media side of Trumpianism, it is a hustle. It is a dodge. Okay. And if you really want to make a point, yeah, it's okay to get emotional about things now. Once again, that's a far cry from turning into Jerry fucking Springer, turning into Glenn Beck or Alex Jones. And when you see people attach themselves to those media connections, make an effort to correct it. Start with the newswires. That's what I do. Okay. You look at right, left, and center, AP and Reuters, right down the middle, newswires. They're not partisan. Start there, then branch out your information sources. Because the more you get into the political rags and the opinion rags, the more you're going to get into partisanship. And I read openly partisan rags. I'll readily admit that on several vectors, including libertarian. And I don't even being a groovy libertarian, I don't always agree with places like Reason magazine. Okay. But it's the stovepiping, it's that pigeonholed information base from the Bealian types that people should be more aware of. And it's critical to know that over the next 6 months. Because the next 6 months is probably going to work out to be one of the most important times in American history. It's a success or failure moment for the country. Because if we have to go through a whole term with this bullshit we're going through under these whack jobs, we may not have a lot of a country left. So, listen more to, like I've been talking about for energy, Matt Rudolph, for geopolitics, geostrategy, Peter Zion, for market psychology and the way boards think about shit, corporate boards, ownership boards think about shit, Scott Galloway, Professor G. Oh, his little dude there, the 20-something, I like that kid, Ed Rollin. Smart, hell, went to a great university, talks a lot about economics. About now economics, the why certain political things are happening. Jennifer Rubin here on Substack, Contrarian. Garner your own better information pipe. Use the Howard Beale character as the red flag. Okay. And you're welcome to call me out if you see me do it, because that's not my point. But please don't include just because I'm going out. That's fucked up. That doesn't mean I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore and I'm going to turn that into my own persona. No. But look for better information that's more grounded before you leak out into the partisan space. Because I think opinion is still needed, it's still valid, but if that opinion is expressed as spectacle, as for the purpose of being bombastic and bombastic only, in the end it's not informative. Okay, so more good conversations, more good comments. I got a bunch of good comments lately. Some of them really, people mapped out some thoughts and maybe stop and think for a few things. So thank you for the good comments. Thank you for all the likes and the shares. My whole page kind of blew up last week. Again, that's pretty fun. But just realize I'm just here to share an idea. I'm not here to stick you into a narrative. I'm not here to pin you to an ideology. I just want to know where the ground truth is and how we move past this bad time. Because don't be mistaken, the battle is not over because Trump gets impeached. The whole thing works out the way sane people want it to work out. The House and the Senate fall from MAGA Republicans. Trump's impeached. J.D. Vance is impeached. Would probably end up with President Thune, which I don't think would be horrible. At least he's intelligent. May not agree with his political stance, especially when they're on the dominionist theocratic line. But we'll be closer to W, which is a far cry from the Trumpian politics we're suffering today. But even if it goes all the way through, we think, and we get a reasonable, center right or center left president in 2028 that really is into, doing the right thing, repairing the debt cycle, taxing the billionaires because they're the only ones that have the damn money, fixing healthcare, yada, 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 yada. There's a ton of work to do. And then work is always going to be there. It's like when I talk about the IT cycle, the information technology management cycle, a lot of non-technical managers, especially executive directors and that types, they think it's a linear process. You build a network, you get to the end, boom, you have the network, you're all done. No. It's a circle. You start a project, you go all the way through the project, you reevaluate the project, you find the flaws of the last project, you build better tools, you build better platforms, and you upgrade, and then you look at it again, and you do it over and over and over. How do I know this? I've been doing it for 30 years. Okay. We're not a linear path to a utopia. Utopias don't exist anyways. Talked about that a lot. But even to get to a better place, we got to go through iterations. So there's a lot of work to do. And that work is going to be harder the more people listen to the real life personifications of Howard Beale. Okay. So better sources, better personas, help those who cannot help themselves if they're stuck in a pigeonhole of information. Okay. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you very much for the audience. Please like, restack, all that good stuff. And until next time, especially considering the dire straits we're currently in, please think about it.